Welcome to Knowledge for Greek Myths. Today we are on Lesson 5, where we will be talking about Theseus and the Minotaur. I'm excited for this read aloud. Before we get into it, let's go through our vocab words. I will say the word, you repeat it after me. Spectator, amusing, retrieve, flattered. Which of these words would I use if I saw something funny happening? Amusing. What word would I use if I received a compliment from somebody else? I would use the word flattered. Now, let's look through our Greek myths chart really quick. We've talked about 3 different Greek myths, so you can see those on this side, the myth. Now, today, our Greek myth actually does not have any Greek gods or goddesses, but it does have a mythical creature. We heard about one, the 3-headed dog of Hades. And then also the myth, what does it try to explain in nature, and what lesson does it teach? Again, yesterday's read aloud, we heard about the moral, do not be too proud or boastful about things, and how the first spider was created. So before we get in our read aloud, let's think of our pre-question for today. What is the bravest thing you've ever done? I know the bravest thing I've ever done is put myself on the internet and read these read alouds to you. It's definitely something brave. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's not as brave. But again, our read aloud today, we're going to be hearing about one of our characters who was a pretty brave kind of guy. After today's read aloud, you should be able to describe the main character of our myth and explain the character's actions and demonstrate an understanding of the word unwrap. Again, as we listen to the read aloud, listen for our main character and try to think of ways we can explain or give characteristics or explain his personality. Prince Theseus was the son of the ruler of Athens, King Aegean. So our story here starts off in Athens, which we learned about in the Greek civilization. It was a place of democracy, remember, where the people voted. But during this story, it was still ruled by a king. Theseus had been raised by his mother in a town far away from Athens and did not know his father in his youth or his young age. When he was old enough, in order to meet his father, Theseus journeyed to Athens, had many adventures, and proved himself a fierce warrior. When he finally reached Athens, he was shocked to hear what his father, King Aegean, was telling him. Next week, King Minos and his ships returned to Athens after another 9 years, King Aegean said. This will be the most terrible time for our people when they see those black sails. Black sails? Who is King Minos, and what happens when his ships come to Athens? Asked Prince Theseus. His father answered, King Minos, who rules the great island of Crete, has the mightiest navy and army on earth. Several years ago, his son was visiting here in Athens. There was a terrible accident, and the young man never returned to Crete. I sent word to Crete explaining what had happened and how sorry we were, but King Minos would not listen. He and his warriors attacked and conquered Athens. Why did King Minos attack Athens? Then King Minos announced, You Athenians must share my sorrow. My son was 18 when he went to Athens. Every 9 years I shall send you a ship with black sails. This ship will take 7 of your Athenian men and 7 Athenian women, each my son's age, to Crete. There I shall send those Athenians into the labyrinth. What is a labyrinth, father? Theseus asked. It is an enormous maze with twisting tunnels and rooms cut into hillsides near Minos' palace. Minos commissioned the master inventor Daedalus to design it. Once inside, a person becomes hopelessly lost. Worse yet, living in the maze is the Minotaur, a monster that is half bull and half man. Does the Minotaur sound like a supernatural or mythical creature? The Minotaur knows every inch of the maze and hunts down whomever enters there. Many times King Minos has sent his black-sailed ships to carry away 7 of our young men and women, and none of them come back because they don't get out of the labyrinth. And now next week the black sails will return. Theseus said, "Father, you know my skills as a warrior. I am 18 years old. I will take place of one of these youths and stop the Minotaur before it can strike again." "No, my son, I will not let you risk your life," King Aegeus replied. "Father, how can I let this continue when I know I can stop it? I am the person with the best chance against the beast." Finally, Theseus convinced or persuaded his father and told him that if he was successful, he and the other Athenians would return on King Minos's ship with white sails. A week later, the prince and the other young Athenians boarded King Minos's ship. When they reached the island of Crete, guards led them to King Minos's throne room in the palace. There, King Minos sneered or made a face of dislike. "It is fitting that the son of the king of Athens should not return to his home, as my son did not return to his." Theseus answered, "It is more fitting that the son of the king of Athens should end this horrid business once and for all." Do you think Theseus will be successful? Standing at King Minos's side through all of this was his daughter, Princess Ariadne. The princess was amazed to see that Theseus was not afraid. She thought, "What an extraordinary man! I must save him." But how? Even I would not be safe from my father's fury or anger if he found out. Princess Ariadne needed help, so she went to see the most brilliant man she knew, the man who also happened to be the creator of the labyrinth, Daedalus. The clever Daedalus told her, "It is impossible to sneak a weapon into the maze. The guards would find it and remove it, and eventually they would trace it back to you. However, if the reports of Theseus' bravery are true, he may still have a fighting chance against the Minotaur. Then at least he can help him find his way out of the labyrinth. Here's what you must do." What does Daedalus have in his hand? What do you think it's for? That night, Princess Ariadne went to Theseus's room in her father's palace. She told the young hero, "Wind this ball of string around yourself beneath your clothes so the guards will not see it. After you enter the labyrinth, tie one end of the thread to the handle of the gate and unwind the rest as you go through the maze. If you defeat the Minotaur, rewind the thread and it will lead you back to the same route to the gate. And if you succeed, you must take me with you to Athens. For if my father finds that I have helped you, of course I will take you," Theseus said. "Thank you, princess." What do you think will happen? The next day, after the guards closed the gates of the labyrinth behind the Athenians, Theseus told the others, "Wait here. I go to seek the Minotaur. If I fail, you are no worse off. If I succeed, we will be able to return safely to Athens." Tying the thread to the door handle, unraveling it each step, Theseus set off into the labyrinth. The word unraveling means undoing or unwinding. Within 5 minutes, he was hopelessly lost. But still, he went on. though he knew that the half man, half bull might be waiting around the next bend for him, or sneaking up from behind, ready to eat him. Finally, Theseus found himself at the entrance of the great central room. Resting on the stone floor at the end was the Minotaur. It had a huge muscled body of a man, but instead of a man's head, there was the head of a bull with long, sharp horns. Theseus broke off the golden thread and stepped forward. The Minotaur rose to its feet to face him. Then the Minotaur charged. Theseus waited as the huge beast rushed toward him. At the last moment, the young prince stepped to one side and vaulted over the monster's back, means jumped over. Confused at not having caught him on its horns, the Minotaur turned back and charged again. Again, Theseus avoided its horns, leaping to the other side this time. Over and over again, Theseus escaped the deadly horns. Each time, Theseus was moving closer and closer to the wall of the room. Finally, as Theseus leaped aside once more, the Minotaur, unable to stop, ran with an explosive shock into the wall. Staggering, it fell to its knees. Theseus leaped upon its back and seized the great horns. He wrestled the Minotaur to the ground and eventually defeated him. If Theseus defeated the Minotaur, who won? That's right, Theseus won. Hours later, the other Athenians saw their prince emerging wearily and triumphantly from the stone tunnels. Untying the thread that led him back, he said quietly, "Let's go home." Opening the gate, which was never locked, for no one had ever returned, the Athenian stole out or snuck out quietly. The day had passed, and the city was now shadowed with night. They moved down to the harbor and found Princess Ariadne waiting for them in the shadows of the dock. Then they all set sail for Athens, bearing with glad news. Thanks to Theseus, the danger of the Minotaur was finally over. Theseus, however, had forgotten to change the sails from black to white. Why was Theseus supposed to change the sails? When his father, King Aegean, saw the black sails from his perch on a cliff, he fainted or fell forward into the sea. To this day, the sea King Aegean fell into is now called the Aegean Sea. Yeah, myths often try to explain something that came to be. What does this myth try to explain? The hint is right at the end. So right at the end, when the king fell in the sea, they call that sea, the big kind of smaller ocean, they call that ocean the Aegean Sea. Why does King Minos send 14 Athenian youths into the labyrinth every 9 years? Why does Princess Ariadne help Theseus even though she knows her father would be furious? How does Theseus defeat the Minotaur and escape from the labyrinth? Again, we're supposed to be focusing on Theseus and the ways we can describe him. So what are some character traits you would give Theseus? Why? One character trait I would give is determination, because in the read aloud, I love hearing the part where he was hopelessly lost, yet it said he continued on. So even though he was lost, he continued on. So that's someone who has determination. Our word work word for today is the word unraveling. I'll repeat the word. You say it with me. Unraveling. What does ing make at the end? What sound does ing make in this word? How many syllables is this word? What do you think unraveling means? So unraveling means unwinding or coming apart. The threads in the old worn blanket began unraveling after it was washed many, many times. Have you ever had an item that was unraveling? I know for me, once I had a shirt with a string hanging down. I started pulling the string and it started unraveling the sleeve of that shirt. Again, in our Greek myth journal today, let's talk about Theseus and the Minotaur. Talk about some of the character traits you learned about Theseus and how he defeated that Minotaur. Again, as we continue on, thank you for listening. We will continue with our Greek myths.